There's a silent blueprint behind every genular, every revolutionary.
Let's talk about what happens when an entire society just stops believing. You know, when the central idea that holds everything and everyone together simply vanishes. It's not a new story. In fact, history has left us a kind of map.
And I want you to really think about this. That one thing that gives your life structure, its meaning, its purpose. What if, tomorrow, it was just gone? See, this isn't some abstract thought experiment. It's a deeply personal question that entire civilizations have been forced to answer again and again.
And that's why looking back is so important. When we dissect these massive collapses of belief, they're not just old stories. They're anatomy lessons. They show us bone by bone exactly how things fall apart. And more importantly, how we can maybe build something in our own lives that actually lasts. Okay, let's dive in.
All right, lesson number 1. And here's the thing. Collapse almost never starts with a big explosion. It's not a bang. It's more like a whisper. It begins when the little things, the everyday actions that give our lives a rhythm, just fade away.
You know, it's the empty altar, sure, but it's also the missed morning workout, the weekly phone call you stop making. They seem so small, right? But those things, they're the scaffolding of our entire mental world. And when that scaffolding starts to come down, the whole structure gets real wobbly, real fast.
And believe me, this isn't some new age idea. We're talking about the late Bronze Age here. Widespread chaos and instability led to entire civilizations just stopping their most important rituals. So the lesson from thousands of years ago is for you today. That morning coffee, that walk you take after dinner, that's not just stuff you do. It's the invisible axis your whole world spins on.
Okay, so rituals are one thing. But what happens when our belief isn't in a what, but in a who? This brings us to our second lesson. What happens when the prophets, the leaders, the mentors, the people we look up to, fail?
And oh boy, history is just littered with examples. You've got prophets in ancient Jerusalem swearing the city is protected by God, right up until the moment it's being burned to the ground. You have Roman emperors calling themselves gods, who turn out to be deeply, deeply human and corrupt. The pattern is clear. When the symbol falls, the belief itself shatters.
And this is the key takeaway, right here. There is a huge difference between being inspired by someone and building your entire foundation on them. Why? Because people are fragile. Ideas, principles, those are durable. One will let you down. The other, if it's true, never will.
On to lesson 3. This one's about the systems we build to protect ourselves. What happens when the law, the one thing that's supposed to be about fairness, gets twisted and turned into a weapon?
This is where the social contract really starts to tear apart. Look at the fall of the Western Roman Empire. The law became a club for the rich and powerful to beat everyone else with. And people didn't just lose faith in the laws, they lost faith in the entire idea of Rome. And the lesson for us? It's exactly the same. Whether it's a relationship or a company, if the rules don't have compassion, the whole thing is doomed to break.
And this isn't some modern critique, by the way. We're talking St. Augustine, over 1,500 years ago. He saw it plain as day. An empire without justice is just a glorified gang. It's this timeless reminder that for justice to mean anything, it has to have a heart. All right, our fourth lesson, and this one might be the sneakiest, most corrosive collapse of them all. This is what happens when something sacred, something that should be priceless, suddenly gets a price tag slapped on it.
I mean, check this out. In late medieval Europe, you could literally buy your way out of punishment for sin. Seriously. They were called indulgences, and it was big business. But can you see what happened? The moment you turn salvation into something you can buy at a store, you've completely hollowed out the meaning of faith. It's no wonder the Reformation was just around the corner.
So this is a huge warning sign for us today. Think about it. Your creativity, your integrity, maybe even your relationships. The second you put a dollar sign on your deepest values, you start to lose them. You've got to figure out what in your life is absolutely not for sale, and then you have to guard it with everything you've got.
Okay, so we've looked at 4 ways things can totally fall apart. It's a bit grim, right? But here's the hopeful part. What happens in the quiet, after the crash? Well, it turns out there's a universal pattern for how we rebuild too. And it never ever starts with some big, new, grand theory. No, it starts small, like really small, human scale. It's people turning back to each other, in little communities, quiet acts of kindness. creating new rituals, just for them.
And you see this pattern everywhere once you look for it. When the Great Temple in Jerusalem was destroyed, what popped up? Tiny little house churches. When the massive Soviet Union collapsed, people started small cultural clubs in their basements. It's the same story over and over. When the big things fail us, we find meaning again in the small, true things.
So that brings all this ancient history right here, right now, to us. Because let's be honest, we might not bow down to Zeus or Ra, but we absolutely have our own gods. We all have those central pillars we build our entire lives around.
We worship our careers, our political identities, our relationships, our own ambition. And here's the kicker. These modern gods can fail just as spectacularly, sometimes even more painfully, than any old one. One phone call from HR, one bad election result, one betrayal, and your entire world can just disintegrate.
And let's be real, they will fail. Sooner or later, whatever you've put on that pedestal is going to get tested, and some of it is going to break. The only real question is, what do you do then? Because this is the most important lesson in all of this. The collapse isn't the end of the story, it's page 1. It's the start of the real work, the work of building something better, something stronger, something that's actually true.
So all those anatomy lessons we just went through, that's our blueprint. 1. Guard your rituals. 2. Trust principles, not personalities. 3. Make sure your rules have a heart. 4. Know it isn't for sale. And 5. When it all comes crashing down, start small, start true. That is how you build a life that can actually survive when your gods fail.
Look, the history has been written. The lessons are right there for us to see. So there's really only one question left. And it's not for me to answer, it's for you. Knowing that things fall apart, what are you going to build that lasts?